And the underlying story comes from a Zuni legend about two identical twin brothers who were known as the Hero Twins, and they went out to slay a monster known as the Swallower of Clouds. And this Swallower of Clouds lived in the highlands and was drinking the moisture out of the clouds and was eating the people and bringing drought to the land. And the two Native American twins decided to go out and slay the monster and to save their people. So in the story Cloud Swallower, the two identical twins in the story are also going out to save their pueblo, but they do it in different ways. One is interested in the gold behind the pueblo. He feels that by giving people jobs and by having industry there, it would save his pueblo from starvation or poverty and that type of thing. The other brother was an environmentalist, and he wanted to maintain the spirituality of the pueblo. But anyway, in the story, these two guys are struggling, and that's where the conflict comes in, and this is where murder and mystery and intrigue all play out. We should be looking here for arroyos that are more suitable, but that was a good one back there. Perfect, actually. Now the story begins, Cloud Swallower begins when two brothers, identical twins, are at a party, have too much to drink, decide to go home, and they get in a furious argument on the way home. And Barney Aviles, who is driving the truck, kicks his brother Robert Aviles out. And it's a cold night, 1 o'clock in the morning. We are at 6,000 feet here, and it's desert, high desert country. So when Barney pulled off with the truck, he left his brother up on the highway. It was cold, and he wanted to get out of the wind, so he came down into this arroyo here, became sick because of his excessive drinking, was weak, and basically was hoping that his brother would come back to pick him up. He did hear a car. The car did stop on top of the bridge, and what happened was that our Robert Aviles was trying to get up, trying to get oriented, and behind him he heard a noise of somebody walking toward him, and he turned his head, and he was surprised by who he saw, and that person who he saw broke his neck and left him here to die. Why did somebody come down to kill Robert Aviles, who was an environmentalist, a strong Pueblo man? He wanted the best for his Pueblo. Why later did they find the body with a right foot severed? And who did that? Was it the same person that murdered him? Or was it somebody else? And so the story goes on. This is Don Juan Oñate, who was a colonist that brought several hundred people to New Mexico. And he is revered by the Hispanics in New Mexico because he colonized, one of the first colonizers. But he is not viewed the same way by the Native Americans because he was involved in quite a bit of warfare, subjugation of Native Americans, and one famous incident is with the Pueblo of Acoma, where Oñate, on returning from some pearl hunting quest, came back to find that the Acoma Indians were actually in some sort of rebellion, and he sent his men out to attack the Pueblo, which is on a high escarpment, maybe 400, 500 feet high, and they attacked from 3 different positions. They won the day, and Oñate, as governor, laid out the punishment, which was basically cutting off the right foot of every male over 25, every male of the Acoma Pueblo, and then the people younger were enslaved, and the women were enslaved. And that was the punishment. So, historically speaking, if you were an Indian to get some revenge on this, what would you do? Well, you'd probably try to cut off the foot of Oñate's statue, which in fact happened. And part of the mystery, the story, is that the victim in our story, who was murdered and then mutilated, it ties back in history to this incident of Oñate and the Acoma Indians. Okay, our protagonist, Jack Whitedeer, in the story Cloud Swallower, has never visited Oñate's statue, just because it represented so much of malicious intent by the Spanish against the Indians. So he finally came here after his friend had been murdered and mutilated. He finally came here, and he was walking around the statue, thinking historically about what had happened to his people, and he heard a buzzing noise, and he approached the statue and discovered that, in fact, one of the boots was actually duct taped to the statue, and lots of flies were around it, of course, and it was his friend's foot that had been cut off, had not been discovered, and Jack discovered the foot as part of the leg of Oñate. Now, what had happened prior to that? Why was there a space to put this foot? Because Jack and his friends had formed a group called the Popeyans, who were sort of an underground group of Native Americans who tried to do everything they could to interrupt the Quatricentennial, which was an attempt to honor Oñate. And they had gone out at night and cut off the bronze foot of Oñate as a symbol for what Oñate had done at Acoma. Well, it's a story that's part fiction, part fact, both historical and current. So, Jack Whitedeer lives in a double-wide trailer right in this area here. And he lives down here because he didn't want to associate with his Pueblo that much. He had sort of become disenchanted with all things about the Pueblo and the religion and everything like that. Now, he would later come back to the Pueblo, but at this point, in the first part of the story, he's separated himself from his father, who lives on the Pueblo, and his religion and so forth. It's okay, Silky. It's all right. Step up. Okay. This valley dried up. This is where they farmed. They lived in these caves that you can see, and he's descended from all these people. This community here lasted 700 years before they had to move. They ran out of resources. They had no animals to hunt because they hunted them all out. The river dried up in the valley. They couldn't farm, so they moved. But